Hi, welcome, and Joe here over at willowcottage.com. It is dye pot. I say Thursday, it's not. It's been a nightmare here, so I do apologise for the lateness of this video. It should have been out on Sunday. Our neighbours have been doing landscaping work with contractors, front and back. Still at it today, so I'm trying to get this intro filmed with the hopes that I can get this stuff dyed this afternoon, but there's not a lot to dye this week. So the winners for the I say winners, the vote that actually won this week was this one, which was option number 2. So you've got Peking duck, you have well, I looked up the pictures for kingfishers and it ended up giving me this, but I think it's actually some sort of parrot. Okay, and this one here, some sort of paradise birds. So we're going to talk about this because it's a little bit different than usual. Usually I have pictures where they've got the colour boxes underneath. Okay, so I thought, challenge yourself a little bit this week, ladies. And if you've got a picture at home that has got the most amazing colours in there, go and have a look at it and I'll explain now. So this one here, so I'll pop the picture up here on the top now. So this is one I'm going to be starting with for Storyteller Bats next weekend. So this is the Peking duck. And on the Peking duck, you have got, if you can see on the picture now, you have got this most amazing, the boldest colour that sticks out to me is the sapphire blue and the electric violet purple. So it's a really bright, vivid purple, okay? Then you've got this fuchsia pink in there, and then there's a slightly golden orange. And then, I mean, if you really wanted to, you could incorporate the colour background as well. Plus there's white in there and there's black in it as well. So you could go a multitude of different options for that one for blending into a bat. You could go sapphire, electric purple, and maybe have a black. So go black, sapphire blue, electric purple, and then use the fuchsia pink or a raspberry pink, amethyst pink if you've got that in your dyes, and then you've got this orange, and then it goes into this golden yellow, and you could use maybe the olive green in the background and dye up some mulberry silk oils or some trilobal, which I will be using this week in all 3 of these, just so you can see that you can add in the colours. We will go down that route of what I'm going to put together, but I do have some really vivid coloured mulberry silk oils. I might use that in 1 or 2 of them, but I'm generally just gonna, what I'm going to do with this one, I mean, you could, if you liked oranges, we know there's a few on here that don't like orange, but you could go with this bright orange into the gold but come from the fuchsia pink, and then use the sapphire blue, the electric violet and the black as your highlight colours, just little pops of them because they are so bright and vivid. But you could go dye it fuchsia pink, then go into the orange and then into this golden yellow if you really wanted to. I would always stick with, if I'm going to dye wools, okay, especially if you're going to be blending with them, stick with 3 colours if you can. 5 at a max. It's a bit like the same rules, the golden rules for gardening. Always odd numbers. It's more pleasing to the eye if you use odd numbers, okay? So 3, 5, 7s. Never go anywhere near 7s. But when you're actually just dyeing the wool itself before you even add any other colours, okay, you want to stick with, I would go 3 on this and then add 2 other colours, maybe 3 extra colours on top of that, just to give it pops of life. Now you've got this the parrot or whatever wild bird it is, and the more dominant colours are this really bold sapphire blue again. You've got a pale blue and you've got these corals, and there's actually some lime green in there. So what I thought with this one is I would just do a gradient of these this vivid sapphire blue, water down the same sapphire blue and use a coral in with it as well, and then use the lime green as my highlights. Now you could say again, you can incorporate the background, which is a really dark green, forest green, and they use the sapphire and the corals and the lime greens as pops of highlights when you get to actually blending up the colourway. So you could go for a black into dark greens and then add those colours on top as your pops. But I'm just going to go with the obvious, which is the sapphire blue, the light blue, the lime green and the coral on this one. Okay, and then this one's really unusual. You've got this almost aubergine chocolate brown colour, and you've got this really dusky dark tan orange. You've got this background of olive green, you've got this golden yellow, and then you've got this red, and then there's the black in there as well. So you've got a variety of things you can do with your colours. So here I've got some fuchsia pink, which I could use for the Peking duck if I didn't want to dye it, and that's probably what I'll do. As I say, I think I'm going to go black, sapphire blue and fuchsia. And what I've done at the top of my little sheet as well, I've just written down the main colours that I see pop out. So I can use the fuchsia that's on there as my main pop out colour. I can dye up this into some oranges. So I've got that orange and yellow in there, but I do have oranges and yellows over there in my cupboard. And I've got it in bamboo and I've got it in flax. What else could I do? I've got blended fibres as well down there. So have a little look around, see what you've got if you're really lucky to have a decent stash. Me-wise, obviously I do this for a living, so I'm always going to have quite a decent selection of colours to source from. Otherwise, you can just dye it. If you've got undyed fibres at home, like alpaca, faux angora, nylons, trilobal, those sort of things, you can dye all those up into your little colours to add in afterwards. Okay, so this one I'm going to go sapphire blue. I'll start with the coral, so an orangey pinky sort of colour. Then I'm going to go into the sapphire blue, and then I'll go into the lighter blue and make it a 3 colourway. It's going to be a really simple, really easy dye session today. It's not going to be anything extravagant. I'm not going to be dyeing lots of different colours up and lots of different fibres. Just make it easier for you so you can see the transition from a really basic moment. And then this one I'm going to go with aubergine, and I'm just going to have a solid roving today on this one at the bottom, because there's lots of these bold colours in there, and I can actually add them from the stash that I've got up there. I have got biodegradable nylon, which is in a lovely golden yellow. I have got these oranges there as well, and I've got yellows there. I've got olive green, which would be really, really cool as my backdrop colourway if I wanted to add that. But aubergine or an espresso bean, if you've got Dharma dyes at home, really good. It's got these reddy undertones, which is really what I'm getting and perceiving from that. It's not a solid set brown, it's a warmth brown. It's got really deep warming colours in there. So that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to go and pop downstairs. Hopefully no machinery is going to get used while I'm doing this dye pot day. And then I can get this all edited and sorted for use for tomorrow, so I can do the ending. I'm dyeing on Kent Romney this week, partly because I had lots of it in stock. There we go, Kent Romney with merinos and trilobal, and what other fibres that I've got lying around that I think will look really, really fantastic and complement it without it looking too much in your face. So I'm going to show you how I do a solid dyed roving, which is I think something I've not have covered, but it's been a while since I've probably done that anyway. I may tinker about with a bit of putting pigments together for the coral, so adding in some extra colour to a solid colour to make a different shade. I think it's probably a topic we need to definitely get onto a bit more often. It's not something I do a lot of. You know, actually, I'm telling you, like, it is something I do quite a lot of. I just forget to do it on my Patreon videos. So yeah, I'm going to go off and do that without further ado, and I will catch you in a bit. Okay, so the Kent Romney has been soaking in the sink and it's completely saturated now. So I'm going to start with my first one, which is the solid coloured dyed roving, and I'm using an aubergine, and it's those ones down the bottom. This picture here, I'll pop it up on the screen now, because I want the warmer tones of the brown more than, as in reddy tones, more than the cooler version of it. So I'm going to go for one that's called Espresso Bean by Dharma Dyes, and I want it a really quite strong pigment. So there we go. I'm going to pop that in there. I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. No, actually I won't. I'm going to leave that like that, and I'm going to go and get a chocolate brown, which was in here a second ago. 1 second, it's up here. Chocolate brown. There it is. So I'm getting the chocolate brown dye. Okay, and I'm going to add in a pinch of that as well. And this is me mixing up 2 different colours. There we go. So whiz that in there. Not as much as the espresso bean, but hopefully it will give it a nice warmer brown tone. Okay, so we're just going to let that dye start to melt away. It's already got citric acid in there, and I use a filter coffee scoop for measuring out my citric acid. I generally stick with that because it gives me a nice amount of roughly, I don't know, about 25 grams of citric acid thereabouts, which is plenty for my needs. You really don't need a lot, depending actually if you've got a very low pH balance in your water. Then you want to just bring it up a little bit because you want that acid effect to help the dye pigment strike to your wool. You also not doing too much straight away means that your wool's not going to strike too quickly, and you're going to be left with bald patches on your wool as well when you're dyeing with it. I've actually washed off a bunch of kid mohair locks that have been sat waiting for me to get a hold of them and sort them out. So I will be dyeing up a couple of those towards the end. So I'll let you see how I do those and what I'll be doing colour-wise. But I am going to pinch the Peking duck and the parrot and do those on my locks. Because with locks, there's 2 sort of different, well, I say 3 different ways that you can dye them. You can dye them literally straight in the pot so you've got a solid colour. You can, if they're very short locks, it's really hard to try and bundle them together so you can get a striping effect. So I like to generally just put a load in my tray and do a mottled effect and just sprinkle my dyes over the top of it, or fill up my little pots, make up a dye stock solution, and then just pour it all over the locks. If I'm doing long locks and they're all bundled up like I do for my friend Mark, who has a flock of sheep and he gets me to dye up his locks for him, then I'll put them in the tray and place them in the tray, and then I'll do striping effect like I do if I was dyeing rovings, so that he gets a colour gradient throughout them, which is what he likes. So that looks like it's just about there, and so I just look for my tongs. And a tray to put the roving in when it's done. Give that a little swizz around. And I'm actually going to take off some, where is it? Some trilobal, and I'm going to throw the trilobal in the pot as well. So I don't bother wetting it or anything like that, pre-soaking it. I just put it straight in with the wool. So I'm going to put this in with the wool that I've got here. So that's 100 grams of Kent Romney, and I'm going to throw these in together. I'm doing the trilobal in the same colour as I'm dyeing this with, because I'll be using those oranges and olives with this espresso bean coloured ruddy brown roving. So I thought, well, if I incorporate the trilobal in the same, then it'll come out looking really quite nice. It'll help calm those citricy colours down that are in the picture, which is those citric yellows, the citric, the more rusty oranges, and the olive that's in the background on there. So they've got a lot of yellowy tones in there. So maybe by dyeing up the trilobal and adding it in the same dye pot, I'm hoping that I can use that to layer on top of those colours just to help break them down. Okay, so my water's now got to a temperature where I want to really just bring it down so it doesn't boil my wool. That's what you want to avoid. I'm just going to turn that down now, and I will show you. There we go. So it'll take a few minutes to saturate that through. If you feel like the pigment's not dissolving as clear as you'd like it, it's all right having the water where it's a little bit coloured. when you get your spoon, put it into the water when you think you will saturate, because it's not till you lift out the wool that you'll see that you probably maybe got more colour in than what you thought. Add in a little bit more citric acid, but not as much as you put in the first place, and that sometimes can help strike in a little bit more, so you get a deeper, richer tone on your oven when you dye it. Okay, so I'll catch you when I'm about to do the next one. So that struck, and my water was just about clear enough that I was quite happy for it to go away, and I added in some bicarb soda into that one because the water was going straight into my sink. So I want to neutralise the pH balance. So just use a teaspoon of bicarbonated soda, and that helps to neutralise that acid in there if you're concerned, especially if you use a natural water source. And you've got a septic tank and your grey water goes into that. Yeah, that's the simplest way to do it. Or let the water cool down and save it for your heathers, your rhododendrons, your pine trees, your spruces, if you've got anything like that, anything that likes acidic soil, hydrangea as well. If you've got one colour, if you've got a blue coloured flowers on it, if you add in your citric acid water, your stock water, once it's cooled down to your hydrangea, it will change the colour of your flowers, which is really quite magical, and then they'll eventually change back again once it's been really, really rainy and wet. So yeah, there is a way to do it, but if you want to save your citric acid water and you have a lot of plants in your garden that are acid lovers, and because it's quite bad to use peat-based soil now, there's a lot of places up here that we can't buy it from, ericaceous soil, so that's another alternative. You can add it into your compost heap if you want to have one that's mostly citric acid. Well, it's an idea, don't know, I've never tried it myself, but I do tend to use my water sometimes if I remember to cool it down and use it, because I have a lot of heathers around my garden and they really, really appreciate it in a separate bottle. So the next one I'm going to do is the Peking duck. Okay, so I'm doing sapphire blue into purple or a violet purple, and then into a fuchsia pink, but I'm going fluorescent pink. So I'm going to go with the blue first, and all I'm going to do is add it. I'm just going to turn this water down, add it straight into my pot. I don't need a lot of it, but I'm going to add this into my pot. There's probably half a gram of dye in there. It's quite a vivid, bright blue. And the best thing about doing dyeing a colour droving where it's got colour changes through it, and doing it in a big pot like my big stock pot, means that I can just tip in the amount of wool that I want to actually dye up, and then once that pigment's saturated, then I can lift out that bit of woven, which you'll see me do in a minute. I always make sure that my trays are butted right up against the side of my pan, so that if the flames are too high, you've noticed, then it's not going to scorch my wool. Okay, but then I'll pull it across, I'll get a piece of the roving that's not dyed yet, I'll add in my next colour and then dunk it down to the level, so I end up with a clean break in between. So I've got my next roving here, so I want roughly about that much because I've got 3 colours to dye it at. So there we go, it's probably equivalent to about 30 grams of wool, and I'm just going to let that sit in there. And I'm going to add in a dash of trilobal to go with this one. Not a lot, just a little bit. And I'm going to do that with all 3 colours. And we're going to let that just simmer away really, really gently. It'll take about, hopefully not too long. But if there's any of the stock water still in there that's like making it, the water is not completely clear and white, okay, not completely clear, then I don't mind, because the next colour I'm going to use is the violet anyway, so that'll help disguise any coloration that could still be in the water if my wool looks like it doesn't want to take any more. But it's striking now, it's quite happy in there. I'm just trying to make sure that all of the wool gets the blue. Sometimes it likes to just sit on itself and some areas don't strike half as quick, but the water's clearing up really quickly, and I could probably get away with that and just a little dash more. So this is the whole point as to why I always say don't use too much of your dye, because otherwise you'll end up with a dye pot where the wool can't saturate all the dye stock because you're not using much. But you can always add in a little bit extra if it looks like it needs it, because you will only take up so much of the dye pigment that the follicles on the strands and the staple will allow it to do. So I'm just going to swish that around a little bit more. There you go. So give that a few minutes. It's striking really, really well, and then we'll pull that out and we'll put the next section in. So we've got to that point now, and you should be able to make out that the water is clear. So you can see the bottom of my pot. So that's ready for me to now. I'm just going to turn this heat down a little bit more. I'm going to find my end. Oh, there's the trilobal, that vivid blue, and find the end of my roving. Let that just drain through, and I'm literally just going to plop it over the other side and leave it lay in the tray. Right, let's pull that over a little bit. There we go. Next up is my electric violet, which is the colour I'm going to go with for the second section. So there we go. Again, there's probably, I'll just do a little bit more of that. There's about 3/4 of a gram in there, or 0.75 grams on micro scales. Okay, so I'm going to go with that amount, and that leaves me with that much left. For the next colour, I'm just going to pull that blue over a little bit more, and I'm going to plop that in with a little dash again of the trilobal. Put that in there with that. And if you feel that you want a darker colour, then you can always add a little bit more once this has started to show that it's saturating. And that'll be a few more seconds. It won't take long. Right, so there we go. Again, we have got clear water. I could add in a little bit more for what to make it a bit bolder, but I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite happy with that colour. And we have that, and the trilobal that was in there as well. And then lastly, we're going to go with the fluorescent pink, which you really don't need a lot of. I'm just going to use the tiniest bit because it takes ages to saturate. That's probably a bit too pale. I'm always quite weary using this dye because it's very, very strong. Magenta as a rule, as in strong pinks, are really, really quite hard to work with, and really good balance where it doesn't overface. That'll do. That will do. If I feel it needs a bit more, then I can add a little bit more to it. But it's one of those colours that don't always end up with a clear bath of water afterwards. So I'm just going to pull that in and plop those in. And if it doesn't strike as bold as I want it, I know for a fact that upstairs in my room on my shelf I have a really bold raspberry pink. Right, so I'm just going to leave that to do its job now, and I've kept those dies to one side as well because I want to use them on a tray of locks. Right, so I have ended up with now a sort of murky pink colour, but I'm not too fussed because the next colour that I need to do is a coral orange, which is like a very slight pinky hue to an orange. So I'm quite happy, I don't mind that. I don't mind that because that should actually get soaked up with, and there is my fluorescent pink in there, but we're going to tone those all down when we blend them up next week in the art bats. There we go. So those ones are done. I'll go put these in the sink. Right, next what I'm going to do is coral and 2 shades of blue. So I've got saffron spice here, so I'm just going to add in a dash of this into this, what's left over the pink, and see if I can get a coral. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, it looks like it might be okay. I have got other colours upstairs that I can help to bring that down if I think it's too orangey. So we'll get the end of this now, place that in there. And a dash of trilobal. It is a little bit orange, so let's see. I have got some peach. So I'll add a bit of peach in there. Hopefully the peach will help bring down that orange pigment a bit more and give it more of a pinky hue or more dusky tones, and that should help the colour that I'm wanting. So I've added saffron spice in with leftover fluorescent pink dye water, which there wasn't much left of that anyway, and then I have added in some pink blush, all Dharma dyes. Rinse my fingers off before I dry them off. There we go. That's already saturated in there. We're down to basically a very pinky, very soft pink water. So I'm happy with that. I can lift that out already, and then we've got this bold coral orange, but we will calm that down when we're blending with it. But then again, the feathers on the parrot was more of an orangey coral colour anyway, but we will sort that out next week, as I say. So the next one I need this sapphire blue. Now I just want enough sapphire blue so that when I go to do the end bit, I end up with a paler version of the sapphire blue. So I want this quite bold, because I want a paler version. So once again, so there's my straight line. There we go. I'm going to just pull that over ever so slightly so it hits the water, and then put that in like that. And again, another bit of trilobal to go in here. And we really need this to strike really true, as in as solid a colour as we could possibly get. So you can swish it around a little bit. It's not going to do the wool any harm. I wouldn't do this if I was using a 14.5 or an 18.5 merino. I would leave it just in the water and not touch it, because it will felt the finer the wool. But this is a Kent Romney, so it doesn't mind having a little bit of a manipulation with it when it's in the water. Right, that's already quite well struck, so I'm going to literally lift that out now and leave the remnants of this blue water so I can dye the last piece. Take out that bit of trilobal. Put that there. Take out a piece of trilobal from over here. And then throw it all in with this light blue. That's cleared up that water completely already. So I've ended up with patches of practically white, but they're not quite white. But don't mind, because the picture, there are what looks like white flecks on the bird anyway, so that's fine. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that completely. Right, so let's get this out. There we go. So you can see where the colour stops and starts. That's the best thing about using your big pot for doing colour gradient wheels. I know I do them in my tray, but sometimes when I do it in the tray, it's because I'm not really bothered about it looking that, especially if I'm dyeing it for rovings. But when I'm doing it in here, and I want it for my art bats, because I want a stop in the colourway, then I'm quite happy to be using my big pot. So I'm just going to put these in the sink. Okay, and I'm going to move this big pot out my way. Stick that over there. I'm going to go and grab my other little tray. It's around here somewhere. It is here somewhere. You know, you can never find anything when you're looking for it. You know, it's right here. Okay. So these, I'll turn this heat off. These are my mohair locks. So they are quite short. Okay, and this is what I want to show. I want to show you how I do these. See how short they are? They're about 3.5, 4 inches long. Some of them a bit longer. So all I do is quite literally, oh, crikey, there we go. I quite literally put them in my tray. I don't mess with them or fuss them about too much, because I want them to hold the locks. And I just put them into the tray, layer them out. There we go. A little bit more. I want a couple of packs of these to put on the shop. Right, and do the same with the other side, though I may keep some to one side for another colour. So I've got these big bundles here, and I'm just going to do what I did there and just tease them apart, lay them out in my tray. There we go. So this is how I generally dye my locks anyway, but more especially if I've got locks that are very, very short. So like Wensleydale yew, or a Teeswater yew that has had a haircut and it's a second cutting, like halfway through the season, and they're all X amount long, maybe about 10 centimetres, 12 centimetres long. Sometimes when you're pulling apart your fleeces, it's really quite mind-boggling to try and get them into bundles so you can have them all the same. So I find, and they're usually quite good sellers on my website, to do the mottled effect. So just put them all in the tray like that. Don't worry about putting them out in strips in lengths, because what you end up doing is creating lots of lovely little colours where the dye will saturate into them, and creating loads of little speckles and colour variations as they all bleed into one another. And then I get my kettle and I will just put enough dye in water in the tray so that they don't scald to the pan, but enough that the water is probably about halfway up my tray, and it gives me control over the dye, because if you have your dye tray too full and the water sitting on above, when you're putting your dye on top, when you're using your hands or a spoon, then the dye will just bleed into one another. I'm just going to take a bit out of here. I've got some patches in there where I feel it's a little bit thin. This one I've got lots of. There we go. So all I actually do is dry my hands off and get my dye. So we're doing the parrot one first. So I'm just gonna do little patches of blue over here, little patch of blue there, like that. Sprinkle that on, and we've got the Peking duck, which had some of the sapphire blue as well. So again, just sprinkle some on there, sprinkle some on there. Then we've got the fluorescent pink for the mallard. So I'm just going to do a little dash over in this corner and a little dash over here. Then we have I'm going to use a little bit of this alpine blue to give that lighter blue effect that's on the parrot. So we've got a bit of blue there and a bit of different shade of blue there. Okay. Then I'm going to use some of this saffron spice on the mallard, and I'll use peach on the other one. So on the picture of the mallard there was a hint of orange, so I'm just going to put a little bit in there. I'm going to put the oranges more near the pink so that when they bleed in together they'll create a different tone. If I was to put it nearer the blue, then you're going to end up with a completely different outlook. It's going to bleed right into that and it'll end up becoming quite mucky. And then I've got my electric purple for the mallard, and I'm going to sprinkle that around the blue and sprinkle that around the blue here up into there, and then a blob over here. And then I'm going to go and grab some yellow, because there's a hint of yellow in the... Where have we got? Yellow, gold. I've got a golden yellow here, so I'm going to use some of this over there and sprinkle that over here, just ever a little bit, because there's yellow on the mallard. And then I want the peach to go with this one, and some lime green. So peach in here, up there and along here, and just a dash there. Then I'm going to go with some green. Just watch, I have to go looking for it now. Hold on a second. Olive green. I'll use olive green on these and not, so just a little bit of dash of olive green in that corner and a little bit of olive green in this corner, and then a little bit over here, and then a splodge in there. And then I get my tongs, put my bits away. I grab my tongs. They've both been citric acided, and then I just literally just tamper the dye down into my locks. It'll help spread the colour pigment around a little bit, the purples. And the blues, spread them around, let them touch the other colours as well. And just keep doing that until everything's all saturated. I'm not bothered about it not completely covering all of my my locks, because I quite like it when I get these little bits where the dye hasn't reached the locks or natural bits. So again, so that's that one. Look at that, like a little rainbow. This one over here, I'm going to do the same thing again. So this is the parrot colours. With those oranges and blues and greens in there. There we go. Easy peasy. There we go. So there's 1, 2. Turn the heat from both of these. And have a look. So we have, oh, there we go, the mallard colours with the goldy oranges and yellows and pinks and blues. And then we have the parrot one here, which is the peaches and greens and blues in there as well. Then once those are finished, I'll let those just cool right down, and then I'll rinse them off separately, and then I put them in front of the fire later on, because it's a rainy day, in a basket, and just let the heat dry at them. So I'll show you the results of those next week when we do the results of how these roll-ins have worked for blending up Storyteller art bats, and then I can show you how I'm going to put them all together. So I hope you enjoyed this video today. Sorry it's really late. Sometimes you just can't predict what's going to happen, but thank you very much for watching, and take care, and I will see you, we'll say next Monday. If I get the video up on Sunday, bonus, but we'll go for Monday for uploading the next Patreon video. Take care of yourselves, and I will speak to you soon. Don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe on my YouTube channel if you don't already. It really does help. And share what I do with my Patreon, please. I really do appreciate it. I'd love to grow our community and get a few more members over here. Take care of yourselves, and I will speak to you soon.